Wake up, honey. It's Valentine's Day. And what better occasion to learn music theory? Everybody, welcome back to Music Theory Mondays. Not on a Monday this time. Again, don't take too close of a look at my nose because it's been down to the grindstone and it's starting to show. Yes, I am sick again. I also haven't slept, so this is gonna be one of the best videos you've ever seen in your life. We've talked about chords last time. Today we're talking about how to sequence chords in order to make the entire thing sound good. If chords are individual words, we're forming sentences today. Progressions are the backbone of any song and are responsible for an emotional response in our listeners. Different combinations provide different results, like its foot preparation in Monster Hunter. And before we jump into progressions themselves, there's something we need to talk about before we do that'll make your life a whole lot easier. If you remember, last time we've talked about scale degrees. It's the position of the note within a scale. We have a similar system to label chords within scales. Look at our favorite C major scale. If you build chords on top of those notes following the 1-3-5 rule, you will quickly realize that the C major scale allows for a C major chord, but not a C minor one. The note required for it is simply not there. There's no E flat. Thankfully, music is full of patterns. Look at this. In a major scale, the triads always progress in this order: major chord, minor chord, major chord, minor chord, and diminished chord. These are the chords that can be made following only the notes in that scale. And since we cannot really communicate the quality of a chord via regular numbers, we use Roman numerals instead. Capitals mean major chords, lowercase means minor chords. You'll see this naming convention being employed everywhere, so get comfortable with it. So, once again, major scales go: major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, diminished. Minor scales, however, are much more trickier. You surely remember there are more than one minor scale, right? Now it's time to watch that video you've been slacking on. There are 3 versions of minor scales, so overall we don't have 7 possible chords there, but 13 instead. Let's look at them in order though, to not confuse ourselves. Given a natural minor scale, the progression is minor, diminished, major, minor, minor, major, major. Given a harmonic minor scale, the progression is minor, diminished, augmented, minor, major, major, diminished. Given a melodic minor, the progression is minor, minor, augmented, major, major, diminished, diminished. Okay, that's a lot to remember, so here's a shortcut. For one, forget about the melodic minor. It's made for melodies, so let's not try to fit a square peg into a round hole. Other than that, the most common chords used in minor scales are 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, and 7 from the natural minor, and 5 and 7 from the harmonic minor. This is what you have to learn, and that's it. Also, if you are wondering about the 5 chord in the natural minor scale and why we don't use it, it's because having a major 5 chord is really important for the flow of everything, and it just doesn't happen in the natural minor scale. There's no leading tone. So we just stopped caring about continuity and started doing whatever we want. It's like a video game allowing your custom character into a pre-rendered cutscene. Now, humans absolutely adore patterns, and music is a great representation of it. Every song is just patterns on top of other patterns, and chord progressions are not an exception to that. Most patterns are 4 bars long. You know, the 1, 2, 3, 4. Each time I say a number out loud, that's a beat. 4 beats are a bar. Patterns are usually 4 bars long. Usually, but not always. I'm going to go more into that in the next video about timing next week, but that's pretty much the gist of it. Every 4 bars, the patterns tend to repeat. Not as a strict rule, but as an observation. That's what we settled in modern music, and that's how most of us work in music production. Which means that our job is to make the 4-bar progression interesting and make sure that it loops back around well, which in turn means that the chords within it don't only have to work well going one into another, but also that the end has to click together well with the beginning. And this is where the concept of cadences comes in. A cadence is a special progression. It's the way chords click with each other. There's many cadences, and it's a topic that can get infinitely complex. There's a circle of fifths, there's chord letters, and all of that is kind of a topic that will come in through one ear and out the other if I were to explain it right now. But it's important enough to warrant a separate video later down the line. But this is where the timelines kind of diverge. Music theory gets split into theoretical stuff, the purpose of which is to dissect and understand every molecule of ink on every piece of sheet music ever published, and practical usage. Not to say that academic level music theory doesn't have its applications, but it's ultimately way above the purposes of this course. I'm here to teach you music production, the things we employ during music production, based on the market requirements and overall competition. Also, I'm pretty sure that if I take a look at academic level music theory, I'll just go insane. That's just Lovecraft levels of cosmic horror. If pain is something you're into, you can look up music theory to the nth degree. I'm not going to stop you. All I'm saying is that further down that road you go, the more diminished those returns get in terms of practicality and everyday usage. This leads back into cadences. You can look up all of them on your own time. I'm going to limit myself to saying that the most important one is the 5-to-1, also called the authentic cadence. It's 5-to-1, it's 5 chord to 1 chord. Everything ultimately wants to resolve to the tonic, as we've previously established, and that progression from the dominant chord to the tonic is by far the strongest one. This means you can start your pattern on 1 and you can end it with a 5, so when it loops back around, it sounds really strong. A 5-to-1 cadence, since it ends on a tonic, can be a great ending to a song as well. You can employ other chords instead of 1, but they will not sound as strong as when you do. 4-1 is still pretty strong, but not as strong. That's why the 5-1 pattern is so ever-present in our current musical landscape. But what is our current musical landscape? Well, as you might imagine, there's loads of combinations available to you, and some more effective than others, and some are so overdone that they become somewhat of an inside joke within a community. Ultimately, what you have to know whenever writing progressions is there's no real hard rules to follow. Even if you happen to do something outside of accepted guidelines, there's always going to be a music theory explanation for it. So whether consciously or subconsciously, you're not really wrong, ever. No amount of academic writing will substitute your ears, and even if you are hated by the scholars, but people still like your music, you still have one. What matters is the end reception. So that being said, let me show you some common progressions that have surfaced over the years, so you can build off of them when you're stuck or if you want to pull ideas from different genres. Sticking to our idea of having patterns composed of 4 bars, the most common way to use chords is having 1 chord per bar. So common progressions can be, for example, 3 chord progressions, such as 1-4-5-5, 1-1-4-5, 1-4-1-5, or, I don't know, something like 1-4-5-4. Like, you see how it's essentially the same things? It's the same chords that are just being flipped around. And the more you look into it, the more patterns you're going to find. So it's now just an archaeology and exploration game. If you're into moody music, you might want to look into the 12-bar blues progression. It's 1-1-1-1-4-4-1-1-5-4-1-1. This is the most elementary version of the chord progression 12-bar blues uses. There are variants of it, but this elongated version of 1-4-5 you see above is, or to the side of me, is the basis for a lot of them. Then there's 1950s progression, also called the doo-wop progression, I believe. It's 1-6-4-5 or 1-6-2-5. This one is extremely common in pop music, even to this day. That's the quote-unquote joke progression I mentioned before. I'm not saying you shouldn't use it, I just mean that it's so common as to become a sort of inside joke and a wink and a nod to whoever's in the know whenever it's used. Personally, whenever I can't be bothered to write a progression, I just use this one. The amount of times I've waken up from a hangover and thought to myself, this is a 1-6-4-5 day, is troubling. And the last progression I want to outline is the circle progression. It's a little bit more advanced, but I think you will enjoy this. It's 1-4-7-3-6-2-5-1. So this is an interesting one. This progression is built on the relationships between fifths, using the circle of fifths I mentioned previously. I haven't explained yet. I will talk about it soon. I'm just mentally preparing myself for it. So keep subscribed for that. You can use elements of this progression in your own ideas. It's an extremely strong chord progression, so keep it in mind. Oh god, I feel like I've just given birth. It's all good. We're done with chord progressions. For now. I'm not going to waste too much of your time, you know the drill. There's a like button, there's a subscribe button, there's my Patreon, there's my Instagram if you want to contact me. Thank you, bye!